Pumps. They're essential for getting airs into your tyres and your shocks, but why are there so many different kinds of them, and what do they all do? If it all leaves you confused, keep watching because I'm going to explain what the kinds of pumps are, how they all differ, and what you need to look out for. Well, first up is how portable you need it to be, and that one is pretty easy to figure out. Second is the application, which can be trickier. Is it going to be for mountain bike tyres, road bike tyres, or your suspension? For a start, the pumps designed to fill the suspension shocks on a mountain bike with air are very different to those designed for your tyres. Shocks use much higher air pressures but actually contain a much lower volume of air, while your tyres contain much more air but generally it's at lower pressures. It's a similar story with road bike tyres versus mountain bike tyres. Road bike tyres have a smaller volume but are pumped to a higher pressure. Mountain bike tyres have a high volume but at a relatively low pressure. To confuse things, gravel bikes sit somewhere in the middle. So why do these differences matter? A pump is a pump, right? Well, to dip into physics, pressure is equal to force over area. Force more air molecules into the same space and the pressure rises. Have the same amount of air molecules but force them into a small area and the pressure again goes up. A pump works to do both of those things to pump up your tyres. You apply force to the handle of the pump to compress the air inside the pump body. When it's at a higher pressure than the air trapped in your tyre, the valve opens, air goes into your tyre and then is then trapped as the valve closes. You keep repeating that process until you've trapped the right amount of air inside your tyre or shock. Now, pumps compress air using a piston. The size of that piston, its area, determines how much air it's going to shift each time you push it a given distance. If you have a big piston, you'll move a lot of air, but getting all that air to a high pressure in one go will take a lot of force. If you have a smaller piston, you won't shift much air with each stroke, but you'll actually need much less force to push that air to a higher pressure. You'll do the same amount of overall work to get to the same air pressure, but it's split into much smaller, easier chunks of effort. So to summarise, if you use the wrong pump for your application, it'll either be really hard work, or it'll take you ages to get to the right pressure. Stopping all that air you've shifted with the pump coming right back out of your tyre or shock is the valve on your inner tube or rim. There are two main valve types in use on bicycles. The first are Schrader valves, which are the valves you'll see on most car and motorcycle tyres, but they're also fairly common on cheaper bicycles. They're also the valves that are used almost universally on air shocks for bicycles too. Schrader valves have a relatively wide threaded valve stem with a replaceable spring-loaded core. It's really important to fit valve caps to these valves, as dirt can easily get inside and stop the mechanism from working, leading to leaks. The other main kind of valve is the Presta valve, and it's much more popular for bicycle tyres. The stem has a much narrower design, which means you need a smaller hole in your rim, which in turn means a stronger rim. They also have a small nut screwed onto the top of the valve that locks the valve closed, which means they're much better at keeping out dirt, even without a valve cap. Though you're probably best off fitting caps anyway. All this means that you need to use a pump with the correct head attachment to suit the valve you'll be using. That's easy for shock pumps because they're all Schrader valves. The threaded stem means you can get a really secure connection that's good for higher pressures and makes it easier to disconnect from the valve without losing loads of air in the process. It's also relatively easy for tyre pumps because most of them will have a way to convert between working with a Presta or a Schrader valve, either through switching parts around manually or in some cases with an automatic system that does the work for you. Okay, let's get stuck into the different kinds of pump. Shock pumps pump low volumes of air up to high pressures, often up to 300 psi or 21 bar. You need to look out for a quality and accurate gauge so that you can precisely meter how much air is going in, plus a release valve that allows you to remove air accurately. It's also worth looking out for one that has an isolating switch like this. It means you can disconnect the air in the shock pump's body from that in the shock, which is important when you're measuring sag, as the extra volume in the pump will actually throw your readings off. Here we've got the big daddy of bicycle pumps, the track pump. It's called a track pump because it's the sort you'd have at the side of the track rather than carrying it with you. Because Because it allows you to use both hands and your full body weight to shift air, you can pump up tyres much faster than with a mini pump. Things you need to look out for: a solid broad base to keep it stable while you're pumping, a comfy handle, and an easy to read gauge, plus of course the ability to deal with both kinds of valve. Having a long flexible hose means that you don't need to struggle to get it into position either, though make sure there's a way to secure the hose when not in use. This one actually has an automatic head, so you just connect it, flip up the lever and begin pumping regardless of valve style. The large gauge is actually graduated, so it's more detailed at lower pressures, which helps you accurately inflate mountain bike tyres, but it still reaches up to the maximum pressure that you'd ever want to stick into a road bike tyre. There is also another specialist kind of track pump, the tubeless inflator pump. It's got a small switch on the head that when you switch it, any air you pump is diverted into a special secondary air chamber. You then flick the switch back and it'll dump all of that pressurised air in one go, which will help seat tubeless tyres onto the rim bead easily. You can then simply top up the pressure by pumping as normal. The downside with all track pumps is they're obviously not very portable, which is where mini pumps come in. As the name suggests, it's smaller and can be stuck in a pack, a pocket, or on the bottle cage mounts of your frame. Most are now telescopic too, which allows them to pack a punch despite being so small. That said, with mini pumps there is always a trade-off between size and ease of use. Smaller ones are much more portable, but they're generally harder work to use. Because mini pumps in general are less efficient at moving air, well, they're smaller and they simply can't exert as much force on them as with a track pump, it's really important to get the right one for what you'll be doing. If you remember the science lesson earlier, getting to the higher pressures needed for a road bike tyre will take a lot of force unless you shift a small amount of air with each pump. And then it would take ages to pump up a high volume mountain bike tyre. That's why we make both a high pressure mini pump for road bikes like this one, or a high volume mini pump for mountain bikes like this one. You can usually tell them apart because a high volume pump will have a fatter body than a high pressure pump. It's worth noting that you can still use a road pump on a mountain bike or vice versa, it'll just be less efficient for the job at hand. You might also notice that mountain bike pumps also tend to have much more sealing to help keep out mud and dust. Most mini pumps mount directly to the valve, which keeps them compact but means they can be fiddly to use. They will often require a little bit of disassembly to convert between the valve types too, so it's generally best to stick to using one style of valve on your bike, or bikes, assuming you're lucky enough to have a fleet. If you have a bit more space, a mini pump with a hose like this one will allow you to move about a little bit more, which can make pumping much easier. While a pump such as this one actually has a special head for use with a carbon dioxide inflator cartridge for use when you're in a hurry. Well, I hope this has explained a bit more about all the styles of pump and helped you get the right one for your needs. If you'd like to find out about the Merida pump lineup featured here, or indeed any of our other parts and accessories, head to the website using the links in the description down below. If this has got you pumped, for more how-to and explainer videos, check out our playlist here and make sure you keep up to date with all things Merida by subscribing here. As ever, just put any questions, comments down below and we'll do our best to answer them. Thanks for watching and see you next time.